Welcome to Childcare Conversations, the podcast where early childhood leaders like you get real-world strategies, honest talk, and a whole lot of support. Whether you're running one center or many, we're here to help you lead with confidence and clarity. This episode is brought to you by our summer partner, Childcare Business Growth, your go-to solution for filling spots, increasing revenue, and scaling your childcare business without the burnout. We're proud to partner with a team that's as committed to your success as we are. Learn more at childcarebusinessgrowth.com. Now, let's get into today's conversation, one we think you're really going to love.
Welcome back, everybody. We are so excited to introduce Sara and Greg from Montana. And Sara actually runs ChildMYnder and has multiple locations of a child care center. And Greg, I think, is a little bit more than just a spouse in this setting. And so I'm excited to get Greg to share and to talk with us. I had the experience of getting to know better Sara and Greg in January of 2025 when I did
I noticed you didn't say what kind of experience. There was no adjective there. That's a little bit,
on monkey management with the two of them, and there was a lot of conversation about chasing monkeys and shiny objects, and so I thought they would just be a lot of fun to have on today's episode. So with that, Sara and Greg, will you guys introduce us, tell us a little bit about your programs? You can tell us about ChildMYnder.
I don't think they should introduce us. The person listening already knows us. I think they should introduce each other.
Sure. Or they can introduce themselves.
There you go. That'll work too.
All right, Greg, you go first.
You
This is always, this is the tricky part of working
Okay,
with
so Sara, you introduce Greg.
Okay,
Ooh.
this is my amazing husband, Greg, who is also my business partner in everything I do. He is the one that is behind the scenes, constantly pushing me to do the next thing, to take the next risk, and also the one who sees all the details that I don't see.
Okay.
Your turn.
This is my amazing wife, Sara. And she drugged me kicking and screaming into childcare. and yeah, it's been quite a journey for the past 20 years, I guess, now. So
what did you want to do instead? Were you wanting a pontoon boat and she wanted a business? Like what was the disconnect there?
well, kind of. I mean, I was actually finishing my engineering degree and had plans on going forward with that. And at the time I had my own audio company that we were doing home audio and whatnot. And so, yeah, we kind of just leaned into the childcare end of it.
I have to say, I think that I don't know that I drug him kicking and screaming. I think I was really cute when I was younger, and that made it a lot easier for him to decide that he needed to join me in this venture. But we met when we actually went to school together, and then we met in when Greg was in the military. I had just started Sunshine. And so we were young and in love, and I would drive, 6 hours to go see him on the military base on the weekends, and then work 80-hour weeks to be able to continue with, I didn't know any different. You just, when you own a childcare program, don't you work 6 to 6, Monday through Friday, plus do the grocery shopping and all the other, custodial work. And yeah. So when Greg got out of the military and he moved back to Montana, he's not the kind of person that just sits around and doesn't, like, if something needs to be done, he just takes care of it. And so I think he can say he was kicking and screaming, but I think it was going to drive him more crazy to see things that needed to be done, or to be able to see new ways to do things. And so he just started jumping in and helping out. And before we knew it, he was pretty irreplaceable.
Oh, well, I just love that. I think that's a t-shirt right there. He's pretty irreplaceable. So there you go. So I've got your Father's Day gift all done for you, Sara. So I have a question, because as we're talking, that sounds to me like, how long did you have a child care center before you guys got married?
So I owned Sunshine for I think we about 3 years before we got married. We started dating at the very, very beginning. We just had finalized contracts, started up the childcare program, and
You still had business partners.
I still had, yep, I still had business partners. And so Greg came in, and it was about 3 years into it that we got married, but he can't say that he didn't know exactly what he was getting into. For
Yeah,
to
one of
begin
the key
Well, I
rules
grew,
in a relationship is you don't get to complain about anything you knew about ahead of time. So I get to complain about my husband's acting career because he had never done any of that the whole time I knew him before we got married, or even the first 20 years of our marriage. But everything else I did know. So that's the only thing I can complain about.
the crazy thing is I grew up in childcare. So my mom ran an in-home program. And so,
Aha.
and I always said, there's no way in hell I'm ever getting into this nest.
My wife is never going to have a child care program.
Got out of the house. So,
Okay, so it sounds like there's a story here, though, because I heard kind of in passing that, Sara, you started the program with some other business owners or some other business partners. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I was young and dumb and 20 years old when I decided that I could start my own childcare program. I had worked in childcare all through high school, loved it, was going to go spread my wings and go to college in a different town. And I kept getting letters from the families in that childcare program saying, Miss Sara, we miss you. We wish you would come back. If you come back to town, let us know so we can see you. And so, when you're 20 and you think you can do, and like the world is your oyster,
Absolutely.
you call up your parents and you say, I could do that. I could run that business. I know I could handle it. And my dad, who was, I mean, my biggest advocate, said, why don't you call the owner and tell her you'd be interested in buying if she ever wants to sell? And so, you know, I hung up the phone with my dad. I called the owner and said, if you're ever interested in selling, let me know. I might be interested. And her words were, Sara, I just listed it on the market today. And
That sounds like some serendipity. That's some pretty serious serendipity.
there was divine intervention, no doubt about it. And so I said, okay, hold that thought for a minute. I hung up the phone and I called my dad and I said, okay, she's selling. Now what? And he said, okay, let's sit down and figure this out. And so they believed enough in me to be willing to invest and mentor me through how to start a business, how to own and operate it, how to grow and expand it. And so they were partners with us, or my parents were both partners with me from 2004 for 10 years, 2004 to 2014, when our son was born. And then at that point, they were ready to retire. And it was so Greg and I, then he bought out their shares of the business. And then it was just the two of us. And the buck stopped with us now. There was no hand holding after that.
Okay, so were your parents business owners beforehand?
No.
So they worked normal traditional jobs.
Yep, my dad worked at an oil refinery and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She raised us. I say she taught me what a childhood was supposed to be like. It was fun and magical and you had you had your safe place. And my dad was just incredibly wise with money and very fiscally responsible. I would say he didn't like to take very many risks. So when he came home and he and I told my mom, we're going to buy a childcare center. She was like, whoa, we're going to do what? But they both jumped in head first and there wasn't the option to fail like that. And mind you, we bought the center in 2004 and right around the corner was 2008. And it was hairy and it was interesting.
Well, the previous owner had ran into the ground prior to, so enrollment was like 50%.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You came into this business kicking and screaming but you had a parent who was a business owner and you had an engineering brain. Am I getting that correct?
Kind of.
Is that right?
I like how he's really trying hard to go, yeah,
You make a good point. Yeah.
Well, I love that. I mean, I think that's a great story. So I would suspect that, Sara, you don't have an engineering brain.
No. I am very much Greg will tell me his vision and I say, can you draw it on paper for me? Because I cannot see it in my head.
Or she'll give me like, I want to do this, and then I'll tell her the 500 reasons why that ain't going to work. So.
But that's a great balance. I mean, I think that that's something that we all need on some levels. And I think so. Carrie and I are cousins. We've been business partners for 25 years. And I have to now stress business partners in there because it has a different connotation if I don't. I think our grandmother and grandfather would not be amused with the other connotation.
I'm married to somebody with an engineering brain, and I created a child with an engineering brain. And they're constantly like, but how would that work? And I'm like, I don't know, it just will. And I go
now, right?
Yeah, you just, if you believe it and you push forward hard enough through enough walls, it will happen. And they're like, but how? And I'm like, it just will.
They want all the systems in place and all of that before, where Carrie and I definitely operate on the we're just gonna go, kind of like Sara's story, like we're gonna open a something or start a something and we'll figure it out along the line. And then we'd probably give poor Greg a heart attack because Greg would be like, wait, come here.
I don't know though.
I got a side that's like, let's do it.
We've had to rein ourselves in because we both are visionaries and we both like shiny new ideas. And so when both of you like that, then it can get really complicated because he'll get excited about something and I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's do it, right? Or vice versa. And so we have had to learn the skill of being able to stop and pause or say, is this in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish this year? Okay, it isn't. We need to put it on pause. I would say we're 80% better at that.
I'm so excited that you're 80% better because Carrie and I are both sitting here going,
no, we just shoehorn it in. Shoehorn it
in. I'll give you an idea.
I think we're like maybe 2% better, maybe.
Our house has been under construction since, what year did we buy it?
2010.
2010. So, yeah,
it's like any other business. Good enough.
We can make this work, and then everything goes to the business.
Right. It's like any other business owner, right? Though you see that's what's bringing you, that's what's making you money. That's where the future is, and so the other stuff it just waits.
Yep. Soon your kids are gonna be old enough to help you, Greg. So you can just put them to work. You can just start giving them the YouTube videos on how to fix something. And so whatever you need built, you just put them in charge of.
Problem is they both have the engineer brain too. So, yeah.
Well, at least you know that it'll be square and they probably will measure more than once before they cut anything.
And they will either have the stud finder or they will disassemble a computer to get the strong magnet and then run the strong magnet across the wall. Not that I've known anybody who's done that.
Yeah.
So, Greg, it sounds like you came from somewhat of a entrepreneurial background, or was it just your mom? Was your father also in the self-employed?
My dad, he wasn't involved with the daycare as much as I know of. He was a diesel mechanic for 40 years, and they farmed. So I think it was more of them just to make ends meet. They really didn't run it as a business. I don't think, in my opinion anyways.
Farming is a business, so they got to have some component of figuring out.
Farm. So, until I was like in the military, it was more of just a hobby farm, 20, 30 acres, So
I feel that, but any farm, just to be able to figure out how to, I don't know what.
Fill out the forms for the USDA requires
a certain. And even then, it's like you still don't make a profit at the end of the year. It all goes back into the farm. So,
Well, I mean, welcome to the world of entrepreneurship, right? Like, oh, so Sarah, how many locations do you currently have? And did you have other ones along the way? What does that story kind of look like?
So we currently have three locations. We started our first one in 2004. Our next was in 2019. That was Greg
That's
dragging
great
me,
timing.
kicking and swinging. Oh, it was awesome timing. Yes, he drug me kicking and screaming to buy another one. I was content with one. We didn't need more than that. And then I mean everything aligned. The stars aligned, and I like to say God just kind of takes me to doorways and then kicks me through them, right? Like he doesn't necessarily. I'm not a willing. I don't tend to take a lot of risks, and so we took our
Not if it involves money.
not if it involves money. No, I like my little nest egg. And so we purchased our second location to house our after school program and then a part-day preschool in the same community that we were already in. The pandemic hit and our after school program rapidly turned into
An
a
all-day program.
full day program for school age kids. So the timing was well. We ran a private school out of there for a couple years following COVID because we had families that did not want to. They were like, we have to have reliable schooling. So we did that and then went back to it being just an after school program after a few years. And then here exactly a year ago, we purchased our third location. And again, it was Greg dragging me, kicking and screaming. I was like, I don't know that I think there's too many issues with this building. I've heard too many things. And he's like, let's go look at it. Let's just go see. And he knows if I get in there and I can see it, my visionary brain, I'm like, oh, it could be this, and we could do this, and oh, look at all the things. And
Well, in both them buildings, both needed gut jobs. So, I mean, literally, the building we're sitting in now was originally built in 1920
mhm.
and was originally a creamery, and then it was a church for until we bought it.
Well, but
And
at least a creamery probably has a pretty good exterior.
well,
Pretty,
the building's built like a rock. I mean, it's a bomb shelter,
yeah,
but it was built, in 1920. So the walls are 2 feet, 3 feet thick.
right. We don't need insulation. We just need rocks.
Yeah, tearing down them walls, to open up spaces for classrooms, is real fun.
No, we're not doing that. That's made out of rocks.
Okay,
Well,
so
yeah.
you guys expanded by not by buying new buildings, not necessarily by buying new programs or programs that we're selling, or was it a combination?
Combo. One was a program prior, which I think she was just ready to be done, and she wanted to go back to teaching at the public school. I think she didn't want to deal with the business end of it. I
Well,
think.
and you guys know as well as we do, it's different. I mean, and especially post-pandemic, it is different. It's different children, it's different parents, it's different staff. And I look at what worked 5 years ago does not work now. And so you have to be willing to change. And I get it. At some point, it's just nice to be able to go to work and let somebody else make the hard decisions. And I think that's so we didn't necessarily buy her program. We were able to purchase the property with all of the assets. She had closed down the program. So it was a dark school. But that allowed us the freedom to be able to go in, make the remodel, do the things that we wanted to do before we opened the doors. And
Yeah,
then,
we probably put another 200,000 in that building at least, and then she had already got all new furniture through the pandemic, so it was kind of nice. We didn't have to buy any of that. So, but yeah, basically that was a complete gut job. I mean, down to studs. I mean, and rearranging.
which is where Greg's engineering brain comes in real handy because a lot of times I can say this would work really well, or I wish we didn't have. One of the rooms had this random, it looked like a little stage. It was actually what was it? The base of an old fire.
So the background of the building, it was three buildings that were added on, or one building that was added on three times. And so we had all different kinds of years of construction. The original house was probably something like this building. It was in the 20s or 30s, something like that. Wood fireplace, no electricity. type thing. And yeah, then they just kept adding on to it. So then trying to mesh all them buildings together and make it all work.
And it's beautiful, ladies. It is beautiful. I love that school.
I love the stories. I think the stories are great. I was expecting more literally of Greg being pulled along. So I love the fact that both expansions were more Greg pulling Sara.
I gotta pull her
Didn't
when it
see
comes to
that
money.
coming, but I think it's a great way to kind of view the fact that in your unique partnership that you guys really do work together. It is not Sara's business that Greg helps with. This is, you guys really do work this as a business, which is so exciting to hear because I think that Greg probably has some advice that hopefully he'll share that, you know, our directors can accidentally have going on in the car when their spouses get in. So, Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot. And I want you to, if you were talking to other spouses who their spouse is an owner of a child care center and they're thinking about expansion, what would you say is the role of the spouse as far as, supporting their spouse's vision, dream of expanding their multi-million dollar business?
That's kind of tough. So in our experience, we both have our own lanes. So I take care of all the maintenance of the buildings, any kind of expansion with the buildings, any kind of changing of the rooms, all that kind of stuff. Sara takes more of the staff end of it, and running the people. People wouldn't like it if I ran the people. Um, so I'm a little more militaristic in that end, where she can calm down and say, okay, yeah, we need to, but I mean, I still give her plenty of input on, yeah, they need to go, they need to stay, or they need to be in a different position type stuff. But yeah, that's tough. I mean, working with your wife is not easy, that's for sure. Because at the end of the day, you still got to go home and live with them. But
Well, and I think he's spot on. We learned the hard way that we needed to identify our lanes and we needed to be able to figure out how to stay in our lane and then call each other out if if I'm crossing over into his lane, he needs to be able to say, you know what, Sara, I got this. And I have to trust that he's got this. The other thing that I would say, Greg always has my back. I mean, always. And that shows up in different ways. It could be he calls me out on my BS, and that's one of the best ways I think that he has my back because I know he will be honest with me. He's not a yes man. He's not just going to tell me what he thinks I want to hear. But he how would I say this? I would say he will call me out when I am being too accommodating or trying to, he'll say enough's enough. And he will see the toll that different things are taking on me. And he's willing to look at that and say, okay, something needs to change here. And so having somebody that can do that, it's a game changer in this business because the compassion fatigue, the emotional fatigue that you feel is real. And so going home and having somebody that is going to speak in truth to you and is also going to protect you, it's a pretty special thing to have.
Absolutely. And it's the combination. It's I support you and I want you to be the best version of you, but this person needs to go, or this person needs to step up their game, as opposed to him coming in and trying to rescue you and go, I'm going to go fire them for you on Tuesday. Instead, it's helping you build that skill up, but telling you when you need to stop being flexible. I mean,
I think,
fine.
Carrie, as women, it's a female dominated industry.
Yep.
And so then as women, we think because we're dealing with other women, we just instantly know how to deal with them and how it should happen. And I think a lot of times we miss out on the benefit of having males in this industry and having their perspective because they bring, we're all begging for professionalism. They bring help us bring that to the table. And I mean, it's been an interesting journey, being partnered with a man in this industry because there still are a lot of stigmas that having men work in childcare, there are people that still don't like that.
Oh, yes. Carrie and I are both familiar with that. So my second husband actually worked in Carrie's infant room for a while. Carrie's husband definitely did his stints in Carrie's 4 programs. And so definitely can relate to that whole, why is there a man in this classroom? But how does it work, or do you run into, and maybe it's an ever or how often? Because one of the things that we hear directors talk about is their spouse tries to fix them or fix it by telling them to leave. Oh, if this is bothering you too much, why don't you just get out? Kind of like that person who was maybe sold the program. They may have had a spouse who was kind of maybe whispering that in their ear. And that's why I think it's great that Greg is just the opposite. Greg is like, we've got this. We're going to do this together. You know, did that ever pop in? Has that ever popped into your head, Greg? Or
Our end goal's always been the same. I mean, we want to be able to pass on to our children either the business or some generational wealth or something. And we want to be able to be comfortable in the end of our life. And that's always kind of been the goal for both of us. And this is the route that we're on to take it there. So that's where we're going.
oh, I love that. I mean, that brings up a great, I mean, that's like a whole separate episode.
Wait, but no, because I was never going to be in that industry because I grew up in that industry.
Oh, but I mean, the turning point is when we actually went to a conference in Orlando. She did drag me in kicking and screaming to them because I'd been to so many different trainings and all
Finger
this.
painting 101,
And
right?
it's like,
To get
why
your
are we doing this? It's like she's dragging me all the way to Orlando for this. And I mean, at the time, we're broke. I mean, we're living on 20 grand. I mean, for everything, we're eating the leftovers from the daycare.
Mhm.
I mean, we have nothing. And because everything we have is going back into the business because it was so ran down and it needed so much maintenance and everything. And at that point, we both kind of sat down and figured out the numbers of what my business was making, what I could make, as an engineer, all that kind of things. And if we wanted to grow, and we kind of looked at the education program and said, this is the best route.
Well, and if we knew, I mean, the truth of it is there's nothing that if we didn't both go all in, there wasn't anything we couldn't accomplish together. And so when we went, and I think part of it was Greg had to be able to see there could be a future in this. There could be this can be you can make a decent living. You can have successful programs. We'd always heard you're never going to get rich in childcare. And it's not that we
Not trying
want
to
to
be
be rich.
Yeah.
We want to be rich in life. And we wanted a business that was going to work for us. And we got to see other people who had made it work. Well, if they can do it, we can do it.
Well, it's funny because what was the first day at the conference? We had actually sat next to some people that we were good friends with now, and they had what, like 15 centers at the time or something.
A ton.
Yeah, they had a whole bunch, and it was just kind of like, huh, okay, well, like, and then you start figuring out, okay, well, what one can make, and then figuring, oh, well, okay, there's actually you could do this.
And don't get me wrong. There are days when we both look at each other and we go, "Why are we still doing this? Should we sell it all and go into rentals or real estate or
Just move to Key West and be
like
done.
should we just what like at some point what but we both are very passionate about kids need to have a safe place. They need to have a fun childhood and parents they need to be supported. And it used to be the family unit was supporting them. Then it was, you had your churches that were supporting them. This is not the case anymore. Our society has changed and you cannot get all of your support off of social media. And so you have to be able to create a community for these families. And we're seeing the impact and the difference that makes.
Well, so I just want to point something out for anybody who's listening in case you didn't catch this in my intro. Sarah and Greg are not in some major metro where they opened and own 3 childcare programs. They are in Montana. So if you don't know where that is geographically, go pull up a map.
I mean, there are metros in Montana. They could be in Bozeman.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'd call it metro. I mean, we just toured a bunch of centers in Denver for a couple of our friends, and basically, it going through them centers, you can tell that the people just run through just constantly. It's just, I mean, they probably have 3 or 4 tours a day. Literally, if we get one a week, you better get them in here and you better keep them. It's like, you may be able to do a 50% turnover or turnaround with a family coming in a big city in a small rural town. I mean, you got to get everyone you can get. I mean, our biggest program is only not even 100 kids. What is it, 90?
92.
So,
So, but it's still doable. And
Yeah.
that's the piece is it is doable. And yeah, I think we're doing pretty good. I mean, like I said, there's still days where we want to bang our heads against the wall, especially with our kids. We've had to set some really good boundaries around. We only talk so much shop at home, when we get home at the end of the day. But our kids are active in our business. If we're doing classroom, cleanings and rearranging, they're in there. They're helping us. They were part of us buying this last center. They had to go out. We made our children go and tour the center, tell us what they thought, bring up any concerns that they had, and they had to be part of the decision to move forward. But it goes back to that we really do want to create the generational wealth, not just financial wealth, but I want that knowledge too, and that hustle and drive. I don't want my kids to be part of this, the lazy generation.
Well, I mean, having raised 2 kids in early childhood that are now 29 and 30, both of them have had periods of time where they've worked in childcare. Neither one do currently, but they have such an ability to connect with kids and to be engaged appropriately with the children in the family. And the one who wants to have kids, I have no doubt that she's going to do a great job raising her kids, even if she didn't do anything else in childcare ever again. She does want to continue to work in the industry, and she works with our business a little bit. But even if they get nothing else out of whatever business, I think raising kids in a business is a great thing, in part because I was raised in a business and my husband was raised in a business and my cousin was raised in a business. Like that whole, there is always work to be done mentality that you have when you are raised in a business. There are things that can be improved every day. If you're raised to just think, I'm going to go get a job, you don't have that perspective that there's always something I can be doing to improve this business, because why would you bother trying to improve stuff in a business that's not going to benefit you?
Well, and I think also for our kids, we have pretty candid conversations with them about the difficult decisions we have to make. They know when we're going to fire someone. They understand that we talk about these are the behaviors that we saw, or they know, when we've had a rough day or when we celebrate, right? This in August, we're spending a month on the Oregon coast with our kids. And they understand this is because we've hustled hard all year long, so that we can have these benefits. It's not just handed to them, it's not just handed to us. We have to put in the work, we have to put in the hustle, and then we get to reap the rewards.
I love that. So Carrie mentioned we're 3rd-generation entrepreneurs, literally raising the 4th generation. So both of us, our youngest,
We've raised them. They adults now.
these adults now, yes. So, but our youngest are both very entrepreneurial minded. Not that the others don't have it here or there, but they're the 2 that are currently moving their entrepreneurial dreams forward. And I just love the fact that you're raising your kids that way, even if you weren't probably necessarily thinking when you were 16, Sarah, that when you grow up and have kids, you're going to teach them how to run a business. because you
No.
didn't grow up there.
No, yeah.
I mean, I grew up thinking I wasn't having kids or getting married. And so, obviously I didn't do
She
something,
failed.
I
She
failed.
failed.
um, Anything, Greg or Sarah, that you would love to share with other directors who might be listening to this episode, who might be going, "Oh, I wish my spouse would get on board," on either maybe how to get their spouse on board, how to celebrate that their spouse is even by their side, even if they're just the cheerleader, even if they aren't the maintenance guy, because neither one of my spouses, I've been married twice, neither one of them could have ever been a Greg. Nope. They were hiring it done. Like,
Military-ness. They both had some military-ness, so they
yes,
had
there
that.
was definitely they definitely had that part, and they did have engineering brains. It just the hammer nail component didn't match that. So
Oh boy.
I have one, you think. So one thing that we have to do sometimes is at the end of the day when one of us might be venting or sharing information, we have to ask, are you talking to me about this as your business partner? Are you talking to me about this as your spouse? Because I'll tell you, my response is going to be different based on what that is. As your spouse, I can, I can come in, I hate that for you, man, those no good, blah, blah, blah. Like I'm here to, as your business partner, I might say, suck it up. No, you got something to, you need to own part of this and vice versa. But I think being able to really clearly define what role are you looking at so that, because he doesn't need me all the time to sit in spouse role or to sit in business partner role. And so when I have clarity on that, then I think that helps a lot because sometimes I want to go to him and I'm like, I just want you to listen to me whine for, like I just need 3 minutes to whine about this and then I'll be done. I don't need the fix it strategies right now. Like I'll come to you, we'll talk about that during business hours. Right now, you're just my husband.
Yeah, I think the having your own roles, I think, is going to be the biggest. And they're going to have to enjoy it. I mean, they're going to have the like, okay, it's like if we spend an extra $1,000 here, that's 1,000 less we're going to make. It's type thing. It's like, but it's going to improve the quality, and down the road, it will, bring it back. I think it's just one of them things. I don't think you could just drag in any spouse. It's going to have to be in them. They're going to have to be fairly easygoing and adaptable.
And honestly, it's okay if your spouse isn't in that role. It's okay to find another tribe that allow you the space to be able to vent those frustrations, to get new ideas. I think sometimes we put our spouse in the role of business partner even when they don't have anything to do with our business. And then we want them to give us all of this suggestions and ideas. And then we're like, you don't know anything about this. So why are you, that would never work, right? And so we set them up for failure. I think we have to be intentional about, are we setting our spouses up for success?
Yeah, I mean, my husband had no interest in, he owned 50% of the business, or 49, but he didn't want to help run the schools. That was not his bailiwick, and he would be a sounding board, but he doesn't even like being a boss. He likes going to a job, doing the job really, really well, and then it's over. Like,
Going home and forgetting about it. Yeah.
yeah, and he continues to, he'll work outside of hours and stuff like that, but he likes the fact that he can just be like, it is time and I am done. The fact that I have to take my laptop everywhere I go because there could be an issue. I trust the people who I've put in power, but if they have an issue where they need me to do some research or what have we done when we did this before, I don't keep that in my head. I keep it in a computer like a normal person. And yeah, I used to keep it in filing cabinets, so that was not nearly as helpful. But so I think what Sara said about if your spouse is not interested in that role, do not try to force them into that role and go get you another business partner. Maybe you have a cousin. Maybe you have A sister, because,
Or
or
parents.
a brother, a parent. Yeah, you guys had the parents, maybe there's someone else in your network, and it could just be this person who runs a similar type of program one town over, and you guys are now going to be business partners, and they're going to run theirs and you're going to run yours, but you've got some synergy, some ability to hire substitutes together, some ability to buy bigger bulk orders and get the pricing down because there's two centers instead of one.
Or maybe it's just like Sara said, your tribe that you get to call and go, can I whine at you? Because I had the stupidest parent just now try to do yada, yada, yada. Or you won't believe these kids these days. They don't understand what it means to work.
Well, we actually have a
Oh,
few friends that own programs together, and a lot of times the husband is either in the background, like you don't ever see him, or he's just there for advice.
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I was so excited to bring you guys on, because it really sounds like what I would consider a true partnership. And you brought up a great point, Greg. A lot of times if the spouse is involved, it's the financial piece, or maybe they bring that financial background. Maybe they were bankers or they were investors, or or they look the real estate side, so they're all about the building from a real estate perspective, not even from a maintenance, overhaul, re-engineer, and it really sounds like you guys have figured out a really great, you found each other, and that this is something that worked for you. And I'm so glad that Sara, you took him kicking and screaming to Orlando, and it wasn't just to go see the mouse. Because when I took
I was
my
just
second
going for a
spouse,
vacation. I was like, ooh, sun in the middle of winter? Okay.
yeah, I mean, I took my second spouse to Orlando, but entirely to go see a mouse. And we had a whole different, infestation of mice. And so like uh, very much made a Disney fan, but did not drag him there for a business conference. And who knows, maybe things would have been different.
Well, and one thing, Kate, that Greg and I have found out or figured out is that if we're going to be business partners, we're going to stay spouses, we have to make sure that we invest in each other. So we intentionally go to conferences, or we go and we meet up with other childcare providers in different parts of the country to get our buckets filled, because we can only fill each other's buckets so much. And so we do that, I would say quarterly, where we're constantly trying to, about every 12 to 16 weeks, we're going, and we just got back from Denver. We were secret shopping for some friends of ours. So anyone needs their program secret shopped, give us a call, because we're pros at it now. But I'll tell you, just that alone, going and seeing other ideas, other programs, it fills our bucket. And then we come back and we're on fire again, and we're not drained. And so I think you have to find your cadence, and you have to figure out what really, what's going to fuel the both of you, and make sure that you invest in that as well.
Well, and
Love
get that
that.
market, because like here, I mean, we're so behind the country when it comes to, I mean, everything when it comes to like childcare. I mean, all the centers we've been touring lately, there's purpose-built centers, whereas most of ours have never, I mean, you don't find centers that were purpose-built in Montana. I mean, there may be a couple out there, but you don't find them.
No, they're church buildings that have been reinvented.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I know of that was here in Billings that was built as one failed after only 3 years because
I
it
mean,
couldn't,
how much of Montana was purpose built, though?
well, all of it.
Okay, well, it depends. It was built for a purpose in the 20s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, or the 1800s, right? Like there was a purpose when things were built. That's why they were built out of the
Yeah,
rocks that were there. So,
yeah.
well, Sara and Greg, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. I love that, like all kinds of little nuggets came out of this conversation, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us. So, with that, Carrie, what do you have to say?
If you learned something from this show, definitely share it with someone who needs to know. And we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. We love bringing you real talk and fresh insight from the world of early childhood education. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay connected and catch all of the latest episodes. And if you're planning a conference, training, or special event, Kate and Carrie would love to speak to your audience. You can learn more about their keynote sessions and workshops at kateandcarrie.com. If you learned something today, share the show and leave us a review below. We'll see you next time on Childcare Conversations.